Hello, everybody. Welcome to the COVID-19 vaccine California eligibility and verification question and answer session for March 12th. I'm Susan Henderson, the Executive Director at Disability Rights, Education and Defense Fund. Joining us today for this question and answer session are Claudia Center, DREDF's Legal Director, Brandy Senziak, the Supervising Attorney at the Independent Living Resource Center of San Francisco, and Russell Rawlings, the statewide community organization for the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. Next slide.
People, let me jump in. I mean, people are hurting. Millions of Americans are hurting. They want their.
Claudia, next slide. So Claudia, you want to go ahead and just do briefly about how to get to interpretation? You need to unmute yourself.
Si tú quieres interpretación, vaya a los controles, clic en interpretación, escoja un idioma.
Also, this is Susan. In people ask questions, the Spanish interpreter will translate it to English, and in order to hear them, English speakers also need to go down to the interpretation icon and select English. Okay, next slide.
I need to stop and reshare because my slide stopped working. Okay.
Technical difficulties, hold on. Okay, great. Thanks, Claudia. So if you want to use, there's closed captioning available. You need to click on the CC closed captioning button at the bottom of your screen, and then captions will appear. If you are using ASL interpretation, Tamara's our interpreter. Her name is ASL interpreter Tamara Richards. And if you pin her by clicking on the 3 dots up in the right-hand side of her video, you will be able to see her throughout the presentation while we're sharing the screen. You can also adjust the size of an interpreter by using the vertical bar to the right of the slides to make the videos bigger. And please keep your mics muted during the presentation so everybody can hear. During the question and answers at the end of the presentation, we'll unmute. You can unmute yourself or we'll unmute everybody. And you can raise your hands using the reactions icon down at the bottom of the screen. There's a little icon of a hand. So we want to take questions by at the end when people raising their hands. But if you need to ask the question by typing, for accommodation purposes, please do use the chat function and we will be monitoring that. So thank you. Next. As I said, raise your hand at the bottom of the screen at the end of the presentation, short presentation. And if you need to, go ahead and type your question into the chat. So thanks. All right, Claudia.
Thank you, Susan, and happy Friday, everyone. Today, we are going over 3 topics related to disability access to the vaccine, eligibility, verification, and vaccine access. And I have the easy job today, which is I'm going to tell you what we know on paper, what are the official rules. And then my colleagues and friends, Brandy and Russell, will have the more challenging job of letting you know how things may or should roll out in reality. So going to our first topic of eligibility. Eligibility now has 2 categories that will become eligible for the vaccine on March 15 statewide. This came out in the provider bulletin February 12th, which we have linked on this slide. We can get this link to you. The first category is called, or what I call, the health conditions group. The second category is the high-risk disability group. There are a lot of people who are in both groups, which is why I included a picture of a Venn diagram on this slide. People may have multiple ways that they are eligible. The health conditions group has been described by the California Department of Public Health as individuals who are, quote, at the very highest risk for morbidity and mortality from COVID-19 as a direct result, that's the end of the quote, of one or more listed severe health conditions. And this list, I think, has been going around a lot. A lot of people have seen this list of quote, severe health conditions. So I put it on 2 slides, the list of severe health conditions. You can find this online or in our fact sheet or in the provider bulletin. So cancer, current with debilitated or immunocompromised state, chronic kidney disease, stage 4 or above, chronic pulmonary disease, oxygen dependent, Down syndrome, immunocompromised state, in parentheses, weakened immune system from solid organ transplant, pregnancy, which I think people keep forgetting that's on the list, sickle cell disease, heart conditions, and there's a list of some examples, but then in parentheses, it says excludes hypertension, severe obesity, that's the state's language, not mine, body mass index 40 kilograms over M2, type 2 diabetes with hemoglobin A1C level greater than 7.5%. So these are the severe health conditions. The CDPH has said this list may change. We think that anyone who has one of the conditions on this list is eligible starting statewide March 15th. So that's the first category, the health conditions group. Here's the second category, high-risk disability group. These are people with developmental or other severe high-risk disability who are at risk of adverse outcomes. And the state has described the adverse outcomes that they're thinking of here. One adverse outcome that counts, quote unquote, counts for this is that you have an intellectual or other high-risk disability that means you may develop severe life-threatening illness or death from COVID. Another is that if you acquire COVID, you'd have a problem accessing care, that you need to stay well. And the third adverse outcome is that if you acquired COVID, it would be very difficult to provide you with COVID care. So we think that the second category would include anyone with a developmental or intellectual disability, anyone where the studies show that you're at very high risk, for example, schizophrenia, anyone who relies on regional center services, IHSS, any other kind of HCBS, people who relied on paid or unpaid in-home caregiving, people who would have barriers in the hospital, should they have to go to the hospital. So that would include people who are nonverbal, who need a supporter, who have trouble following medical instructions, people who use a CPAP or a BiPAP, because if you acquire COVID, you need a specialized room, a specialized unit in the hospital, and those are not as common as regular units. And this is sort of like the schizophrenia example, a person with a significant disability that places them at high risk of adverse outcomes, even if that disability is not specifically listed or studied yet. That would include like a rare condition or just something that hasn't been listed yet, but in fact, it puts you at high risk. And then a person with multiple pre-existing conditions that in combination put them at high risk. So that could be more mild versions of the conditions on the severe health conditions list, but you have more than one. And we know from the FAIR study that more conditions mean higher risk. So when is eligibility? When does this all click into place? So the California Provider Bulletin from February 12th said that everyone who fits into one of the two disability-related eligibility categories I just reviewed are eligible starting March 15 statewide. There are also FEMA-supported programs in California, and my colleagues will be talking about these types of different programs. And so there are some differences with FEMA-supported programs. And so actual access, of course, is different from just becoming eligible, and we'll talk more about that later. So once we learned that members of our community would become eligible on March 15, of course, our next question is what will our community members have to do to show that they're eligible for the vaccine? What kind of documentation or verification will people need to show? So hot off the presses from yesterday, March 11, 2021, the California Department of Public Health issued a fact sheet that says verification, documentation of the diagnosis or type of disability is not required, but instead anyone meeting the eligibility requirements will be asked to sign a self-attestation that they meet the criteria for high-risk medical conditions or disabilities. So that was a request from the majority of the disability community, not I would say it wasn't a consensus, but DREDF supported this. It was the majority view that we should allow people to do self-attestation. So we are happy about this. There are also some template letters that are being organized by different state agencies. It may be that these template letters are not necessary if people are truly permitted to do a self-attestation, but regional center clients, IHSS consumers, independent living center clients may be receiving or may be able to request these template letters. And there's also been some local approaches that have varied. Long Beach, we saw a article that Long Beach was requiring a doctor's note or placard plus proof of residency. We know that Alameda County has circulated a template form, and San Francisco on March 10th said that they were very likely going to permit self-attestation. So that's what I know about what we know on paper. And now I'm going to turn over the presentation to my friend and colleague, Brandy. And Brandy, just let me know when you want me to switch the slide.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. So as Claudia said, my name is Brandy Senziak. I'm the supervising attorney at Independent Living Resource Center, San Francisco, and the legal director of FAT Legal Advocacy, Rights and Education Project. And so we're going to talk a little bit about vaccine access. Eligibility plus self-attestation or verification does not equal automatic access to vaccine. So the vaccine supply is still very limited. And in fact, we've recently heard from the state of California that over the next several weeks, it is likely that it will feel to people like the vaccine access is, or the vaccine supply is even more limited than it has been in the past. However, there are 6 different ways that individuals can sign up for the vaccine. So if Claudia, if you could move to the next slide, please.
Okay, my slides stopped working again, so I'm going to unshare and reshare.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudia. So as I was saying, there's 6 different ways to locate and sign up for the vaccine. So one of the ways is your healthcare provider. You can contact your healthcare provider. This may be Kaiser, this may be another clinic, but you can contact, whoever your healthcare providers are and ask them if they have vaccines available for you. Now, I will say that we have noticed, or I personally noticed in the past, that even though the state did say certain categories of people were eligible, some providers such as Kaiser were not able to offer the vaccine at that time based on their supply to everyone that the state said was eligible. So it is possible that your provider may not have vaccines available. So then you can move on to another way, which can be pharmacies. You can call pharmacies such as CVS, Walgreens, see if they have vaccines available. Some of these pharmacies are by appointment, sometimes they're walk-ins, and also sometimes the pharmacies have wait lists that you can get on. So you can ask questions to the pharmacy that you call to sort of figure out what their process is. Another option would be community pop-ups. So there are pop-up vaccine locations throughout communities. A lot of them are walk-ups. They may be by appointment as well. Some of these you can see on Facebook or by just being in the community. Maybe you walk by one or drive by one. It may also be word of mouth. Maybe your friends have heard of one. So that would be another option. There's also community organizations, as Claudia says, such as the Regional Center or independent living centers. These community organizations may be able to provide access codes that may help get priority appointments. They may be able to provide advice on, nearby locations on where you may be able to get the vaccine. So you can call the Independent Living Center or the Regional Center in your area and ask questions and see what they know about the vaccine. As far as priority codes go, there have been codes issued. As Claudia was saying, some programs are through the federal government, some programs are through the state. We don't really have a clear idea on when codes are going to be issued, what the program is going to be for. Some of them are based on zip codes. We don't really have a clear understanding of how many codes will be released and when they will be released, but it is a possibility that independent living centers or other community-based organizations may have access to these priority codes, which may help you sign up for a vaccine appointment in a quicker fashion. So, I would encourage folks to reach out to their community-based organizations. You can also go to MyTurn. The website is myturn.ca.gov. The state of California created MyTurn in its efforts to centralize the vaccine appointments. And so, I believe the state is trying to get to the point that everyone would just go to MyTurn and all the vaccine appointments would be listed in one place for folks. MyTurn is a website. MyTurn also has a phone number. The phone number is 1-833-4255. This phone number is in case, it may be more accessible for some folks to call via phone. It may also be, easier for some folks to call via phone, but the MyTurn phone operators do not have any different appointments or any different access. They literally are just using the same MyTurn system that you would be using on your computer if you were going to the website yourself. MyTurn can be used with or without a priority code. And MyTurn is basically, you would go to MyTurn, you click a drop down menu that you would choose your language, and then it will ask you, take you to a next page that will ask you, if you're over 18, telling you that the information you're entering is accurate to the best of your knowledge, and asking you some eligibility questions such as the county that you live in, your occupation, as well as if you have a high-risk condition. Once you put in or disability, once you enter those questions, the answers to those questions, if you have a priority code, you would enter it there. If not, you would just click continue. And the next page of the My Turn system will tell you if you're eligible or not. If you are, it asks for your zip code, and then it will show you the available locations of vaccine sites and appointments that are available in your area. I will say that appointments on My Turn are sometimes, sometimes, you may click on My Turn and there may not be an appointment available. And then an hour later, there's a lot of appointments available. I've heard of people having to look on My Turn hundreds of times before they find an appointment. So going back to My Turn different times of day, multiple times a day is often beneficial when looking for an available appointment, because they are released throughout the day and there's no real, nobody's telling you when the appointments are going to be released. So I know that's a lot of information. I know that some folks may not have the capacity or want to use all of those methods in trying to find a vaccine. So I would recommend prioritizing your efforts based on your needs. So, if you feel like it's easiest for you to use the My Turn website, then, that's great. If you feel it's easier to contact your doctor or to call My Turn or to call the pharmacy, that's great too. Everyone should do what's best for them. I would also say that folks should keep in mind, basically, you know what? I'm sorry, Claudia. I meant to tell you to go to the next slide. Thank you. I would also say that if everybody should keep in mind, sort of where you want to go for the vaccine. So for instance, you may want to go to a mass vaccine site, such as the Oakland Coliseum or other mass vaccine sites around the state. But, you should remember that those places will likely be crowded. If you do the walk up in a mass vaccine site, I've heard that there are long walks to the walk up locations. There's also a very big police and National Guard presence at these mass vaccine sites. So, there's other options too. You can, go, as I said, go to your medical provider. These are medicalized settings. So some people are comfortable with that. Some people aren't. If you do want to attend a pop-up vaccine clinic or vaccine site, there may be long lines. I know I've recently heard of long lines as long as 4 or 5 blocks long with a lot of standing. There may or may not be any chairs. So I would, if you're able to talk to someone or reach out to folks that have maybe been to the vaccine site you're interested in going to get sort of an idea of, how the site is working and what's going on. I also do encourage that and think that's a great idea. Next slide, please, Claudia. So also, I just want to point out that the state, has issued these guidelines, and it may not work the same everywhere. It's sort of not the same in all counties. It's not the same across the state. So different sites may do things different ways. Different vaccine locations, different vaccine providers, different pharmacies, different healthcare providers may have their own rules or their own systems in place for how they're operating and how they're distributing the vaccine. So yeah, just remember that, we're giving you our ideas of how things we've heard and, what we think is happening on the ground. But this is all it can all change. It could be different, different places. So again, I would recommend, if you have an appointment somewhere and you know someone that's also gone to that location, checking in with them may also be a good idea to see how it went, if there was any documentation required, just to get a kind of an idea. And all vaccine sites should be ADA compliant. But if not, if you run into any problems, you should feel free to reach out to any of us, I would say, on this call, or any other disability organizations or community organizations. Next slide, Claudia. And also, just so folks know, FAT Legal Advocacy Rights and Education Project is going to be releasing a FAT fact sheet. This will be coming very soon. We're going to talk about the vaccine and FAT people, eligibility, access, and considerations, along with intersections and relationship between FAT and disability communities related to vaccine access and verification. So please, check this out. It will be on our website, which is flareproject.org. You'll be able to find it there. So thank you so much. And I will go back to Claudia now.
Thank you, Brandy. That was a wonderful presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to Russell. And my slides have stuck again. Okay, hold on.
Thanks, Susan and Claudia and Brandy. I am Russell Rawlings. I am the statewide community organizer at California Foundation for Independent Living Centers and facilitate the DO Network, Disability Organizing Network. The DO Network is a statewide network of advocates and organizers connected to independent living centers who have been working very diligently on putting together a advocacy and information toolkit summarizing a lot of what you've heard. The one thing that I would really caution everyone when taking away from this is that this information changes so rapidly that we're doing all of our best collectively to keep up with it. So we're really relying on you as well. And I've already seen several comments about, how do we get more engaged in this process? And the answer is that you can use our toolkit here. And we do have opportunities for folks to join us in the work and report problems and gaps and other things, because the on-the-ground systems can look different. So we're really excited to announce the activation of this toolkit, the launch. It is available in Spanish translated. So you can go to this website here and keep track of the toolkit as we update it. So please check back frequently and be in touch with us. And I will turn it back over to our facilitators for Q&A.
Hi, this is Claudia, and we are now in the Q&A section. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. I think Susan, our host with the most, may be collecting questions, but we did get a few by email ahead of this training. One was, what is the definition of developmental disabilities? And the state has not provided any particular definition. And so our view is that we are and should define developmental disability in a very broad way to include a lot of conditions that are considered developmental disabilities, such as intellectual disabilities, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, spina bifida. I think ADHD is considered a developmental disability. I'm not sure how high risk you are from that, but just I think we should, construe developmental disability very broadly. Another question was independent living center clients. How does the state or vaccine provider decide if you're an independent living center client? The answer to that is we don't 100% know how it will work, but we understand that there may be template letters for ILC providers. And we also know about the self-attestation that I described previously. We got a question about if my daughter has an intellectual disability, when is she eligible? And then the answer to that is March 15 for statewide. And again, eligible doesn't mean you get a vaccine. It just means you can try to get a vaccine. That same person asked, what about household members for the daughter with intellectual disability? And the answer to that is that household members can access the vaccine if they are a care provider. They should be in 1A if they are like an IHSS care provider. If they are not a care provider and they do not have any other, they're not over 65 or in a sector, then they cannot get the vaccine right now. They can try and go with their daughter when their daughter goes and see if they can get it, but technically they're not eligible based on just being household member. And then a final question we got by email was, can you choose your vaccine, 1 dose or 2? The answer to that is no. The only addition I would add to that is that as counties and organizations start rolling out home visit vaccines, those are likely going to be the 1-dose J&J vaccine.
Thanks, Claudia. This is Susan Henderson. I haven't seen anybody raise their hands. I do see one question in the chat, and I'll read that off for you. Are any vaccination sites set up specifically for higher education at high risk, like people in congregate living, such as dorms, or athletes in contact sports or faculty? Who wants to take that one?
This is Claudia. I don't know the answer to that one. I have heard of, for example, University of California at Berkeley, having its own outreach to staff around vaccines, but I hadn't heard about whether they're taking on this population.
Okay, thanks. And we'll see what we can do to find something. I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hi, I wonder if anyone has any more information about vaccines for people who need them in their homes. The only thing I've seen on the state site is that people should speak to their healthcare provider, but does anyone know if anyone's really going into people's homes right now in our area? I've seen that that's happening in some other states, like New Jersey, it's happening. So I'm trying to get some clarity. We get questions about that, and I know that's a need of many people.
This is Claudia. What I know about that is that the city of Los Angeles is putting together a pilot project for home visit vaccination. And I know that this is being discussed in other locations, and generally believed that the J&J vaccine is necessary to implement this. So that's all I've heard of so far, but perhaps Russell or Brandy have some additional information.
I agree with you, Claudia. That's sort of all I've heard so far. I know that folks are working on it and that it will likely be the J&J vaccine.
Okay, and there was another earlier question in the chat from Michaela Goldhaber. What about epilepsy? Is epilepsy covered as of March 15th?
This is Claudia. I think epilepsy might be in the gray area. I have seen some forms of epilepsy being described as a developmental disability, and that for sure would be covered. I think epilepsy is sort of an umbrella, name for conditions. But if the person has epilepsy as part of a developmental disability, or the epilepsy is connected to higher risk in some way, then I think the person could self-attest that they're covered March 15.
And following up to that, what about autoimmune conditions?
This is Claudia. I think that would have to be in the second category. So it would have to be that the person would have a high risk of severe illness or death from COVID, that it would be hard for them to access COVID care if they acquired COVID. So there would have to be some argument made in that second category, the high risk disability category. And then if the person felt like they could, explain it to themselves, then they could self-attest that they have such a disability.
Okay, this is Susan again, and a couple people chimed in and in the chat, and I saw this also. On my turn, some of the sites that you're taken to, if you are eligible and then you make it to, let's see if we can get you an appointment, you can select, it gives an option to select 2 doses, either the 2-dose vaccine or the 1-dose J&J, but I think that's for purposes of just finding anything. I don't know that, you can try to get that, but if you just want the vaccination that's available to you the soonest, I don't know how that works. I think it's to find whatever vaccines are available.
And also, Susan, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And it made me think about something else regarding my turn. There are some appointments on my turn. For instance, over the weekend, I was trying to help some folks sign up for the vaccine using a priority code. And the only location available was Kaiser Antioch. And once you go through the whole process, it said, in my turn, they were eligible. The My Turn site took them to the Kaiser website. And then at the Kaiser website, they had to fill out and create a lot of accounts because they weren't a Kaiser member. Once they got through that whole process, the Kaiser website said that they weren't eligible. So there are some instances where I think different healthcare sites may not actually link up to My Turn and the sort of eligibility codes. Fortunately, about an hour later, I went back and tried for that same person using the eligibility code, and then there were all sorts of available appointments throughout Oakland and San Francisco. But just so folks know, that could be an issue to consider.
This is Susan. I don't see any other hands raised. We've got 4 more minutes. Did you want to add something, Claudia?
Oh, Susan, I actually see a question from
Okay.
a person on the phone.
Okay.
Call in user number 1. I don't unfortunately have a good way of identifying that person, but if they are allowed, they can dial *6 to unmute.
Right. Did you just, I see them.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm assuming maybe that's me. This is, and I have 2 questions. Could someone verbalize Russell's website?
I'm happy to do that. The website is it's a tiny URL, so tinyurl.com/DO network. That's disability DO network C19 COVID-19 toolkit. So it's tinyurl.com/DO network C19 toolkit. All run together, all lowercase.
Thank you for that. Can I ask one more question? Is Ed Roberts in line to be a site again for vaccination? Do you guys know anything about that?
So this is Susan Henderson. They're going to do one more pop-up for sure to do the second vaccine for the people who came to the first pop-up. As of yesterday, there were no plans. They have not approved us to be a pop-up again, but we're going to continue to try to get ourselves added back.
Cool. Thank you very much.
And there's a question from, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hello, so I'm in San Francisco, and one of my disabilities is I'm chemically sensitive. So a lot of the pharmacies in San Francisco, some of them are open, like CVS, none of them are accessible to me because I'm chemically sensitive. I cannot physically go in their stores without being very ill, let alone the possible reaction I can have. The other question I have is, I'm probably really allergic to the PEG ingredient in the 2 double doses, and I only want to do the J&J. It would be safer for me. So what do I do with my disabilities?
This is Claudia. It sounds like you need to sit tight and wait for a home visit vaccination with the J&J. And we just don't have a lot of information about that because it hasn't happened yet, but those will happen. Hopefully you have a healthcare provider that will help you, through telemedicine to connect with a home visit vaccine, but we just don't have those on the ground yet.
Thank you.
Yes, and this is Susan Henderson again, and there's a caller. The last 4 digits of your phone number is 0114. I'm going to go ahead and unmute. You can, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to know if one vaccine is medically preferred. I know that people can't really necessarily have a choice, but can one know which vaccine is distributed prior to appointment in order to try to get that medically preferred vaccine?
This is Claudia. I'm going to have Brandy answer that because I thought the answer was no, but then it sounded like maybe I was wrong about that, which kind of shows how complicated this gets. Go ahead, Brandy.
Oh, no, you're totally not wrong. I don't think that there's a way to necessarily know prior to the vaccine appointment. I mean, I will say that from my experience and people that I know that have gone to the Coliseum, the mass vaccine site, they have been receiving the Pfizer vaccine. So, if you know someone that's gone to a site, you can ask them, but I don't know that the Coliseum is always going to have the Pfizer vaccine. They could have different vaccines. So I don't actually know that there's a way to, I don't think there's a way to determine which vaccine you're going to get before your appointment. Also, I just want to point out, I'm sorry, but during my slideshow presentation, there was a typo on one of the slides. And when I gave them My Turn phone number, I did not give it properly. So the phone number for My Turn, in case people are interested, is 1-833-422-4255.
Thank you, Brandy. So this is Susan Henderson. We've come to the end of our question and answer for this week. We will be doing these weekly at noon Pacific time on Fridays. Next week, we'll be having, we know two of the speakers. One of them is Sasha Bittner, who's on today, and then Sheridan Niglo is also going to join us. And there's going to be another, we just don't have that person confirmed yet. And we'll be sending out an announcement about it again next week. So anyway, thank you all for coming. There is, Lawrence, do you want to unmute yourself for a second and just say what where people can submit their questions if we didn't get to them?
So know if you come up with questions in the middle of the week, or even if you've encountered something, maybe if there's an issue, you can always write us in advance to covidquestions@dredif.org. That's COVID questions, all together, one word, at dredif, DREDF.org. Thank you, and I've put that in the chat as well.
And finally, we will be posting this video of this question and answer session on our website once we have complete captions, and we will be posting the PowerPoint also. So, and when that's finished, we will send an email to everybody who registered. Anyway, thank you for coming. It was good to see you all. Take care. Thank you to all our presenters, our interpreters, and our captioner. Bye-bye.